Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Future is Bilingual podcast. I'm very excited for today's interview with Lauren because, as I'll tell you, I am starting to teach two classes or one class and working on some curriculum development for a second class that are teaching languages through television series. So I am delighted that Lauren and I have decided to have this episode right now. It's perfect timing for me. So Lauren, please tell us who you are, what you do.
Hello, my name is Lauren Williams. I am a passionate language learner. I've just always kind of been learning languages. And I'm a speech pathologist by trade, I guess, or by career.
Mhm.
And I've recently started a business called Polyglot Station.
And what else? You have the TV club. Can you tell us about that?
So the Language TV Club is part of Polyglot Station. So it's one of the services that we provide.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really great for people who are like intermediate to advanced level where, they finished a course or a class and now they really just need some practice using the language. And it's just a really fun way for people to to speak and meet some other learners and get some feedback on their word choice.
Mm-hmm. So what do you do exactly? Tell us, what is it? Where did
So
the idea come from?
yeah, so I mean, it started because Polyglot Station as a whole started with a completely different purpose. It was going to be just a website that had some language games on it and just kind of like showed people what sort of language resources are out there.
Mm-hmm.
Because I feel like there's so much out there and people just don't know about it.
Overwhelming.
And
Yeah.
so that was like the initial goal of Polyglot Station. And then as I got deeper into the language community, I just realized how much people needed experiences to chat and practice. And I was watching some Chinese romantic dramas at the time.
Nice.
And I'm just such a sap for it. And I wanted to talk about what happened in the show with somebody.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'd be like, oh, did you see that? Oh, nobody. Okay, just me.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought it'd be really cool to like talk with other people who are watching the same show. And so that kind of started it. And I asked some people from the Women in Language Conference
Yep.
if they would be interested in such a thing. And so I got a couple of people together. We tried it out, and it was really fun. So I just rolled with it and kept it going. And so now we do German, Italian, French, and Spanish regularly, and then we do have some other languages that we pop
Mhm.
in here and there.
Yeah, I know Polish was there at some point because I
Mm-hmm.
knew the teacher. Yeah,
Yeah.
very cool. So, okay, we didn't do the basic introduction. What languages do you speak?
So I speak English, of course. It's my native language. Spanish and French are probably my second languages.
Mm-hmm.
And then I know some sign language,
Very nice.
and ASL, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then Mandarin and Italian. And then I just tried to start working on Vietnamese this past year.
Wow.
And so I can like understand a little bit at this
Mm-hmm.
point, but like
Mm-hmm.
really not, I'm not talking Vietnamese.
Like you were saying, these courses that you're taking where you're watching TV, you're
Mhm.
discussing, you do have to have a certain level. You can't have a beginner go in
Yeah.
and watch a TV show because they're not going to understand anything past the hellos and the how are yous, for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Like I say people are always welcome if they want to come in and listen
Listen,
if they're at beginner level, but just let us know if that's kind of where you're at so
right.
that we're not trying to force you to talk when you're really not ready for that.
Mm-hmm.
But really, yeah, it's really a great experience for intermediate to advanced learners.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
And are they watching together or are they watching on their own and then they're just coming to discuss? How does that work?
Yeah, watching on their own.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't show the Netflix shows. We
Mm-hmm.
always choose shows from Netflix just because they're widely available around the
Yep,
world. And they have a lot of different series that
for
are
sure.
originals in different languages and countries. So that's where we choose our shows from. And most people have Netflix or have been wanting to sign up for Netflix or something. So
Or can use their friends or like
yeah,
maybe their
exactly. Or use
sisters.
somebody's login. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we don't tell you how to access the Netflix, but yeah, they just have to access Netflix on their own and then watch the shows before the meeting.
And that's great because a learner who's intermediate or maybe even closer to advanced can watch it with the original subtitles, right? Like let's say they're watching a Spanish series, they can watch it in Spanish with Spanish subtitles, whereas someone who's maybe lower intermediate can watch it with English, but they're still going to come together and talk. So you've got that huge gap of intermediate learners. I always feel like, you start as a beginner and you quickly kind of move out of that. And then there's this, you feel like you're in intermediate, you're in that plateau forever before you can consider yourself proficient or advanced or, whatever goal you're hoping to get to. Like you're kind of attacking that huge mass of us, most of us, where we get stuck in the middle, where we need practice. We need to hear so much, right? But we don't really know what to do. We're like, I'm studying this language, but you don't know what to do. You're kind of bored of like flashcards or apps, or you're afraid to talk to a native. Like, so that's like a really safe, comfortable. We all enjoy watching TV, right? We all get sucked into these dramas, or the thriller, or whatever the show is, and then to have all that input, right? It's enjoyable, and then you have the community, which is super important aspect, where you're going to come together and talk about it. So I think such an awesome idea. When did you start? When was the first TV club or language TV club?
The first one, so actually we did one, a Spanish one in I think September of 2020. And it was just like my friends that are not language learners, like they kind of know Spanish or they took it at some point, and like people came the first week and then it just dropped off from there. And so the month after that we did French, and there was people from the Women in Language conference who are like, they just learn languages for fun. So so that went really well, and that was October of 2020.
Which was good. It was pandemic. We were all stuck at home. So why not watch a Netflix show? Yeah, for sure. Okay, so what team are you on? Team subtitles, team no subtitles, team subtitles in the native language? Because we were talking about, different levels and how it's adaptable, right? But you've learned a lot of languages. How do you approach that? How do you yourself watch when you're watching a show?
Yeah, so people ask me this question all the time, and I am team it depends. And I wrote a blog post about it, so like if anybody's listening and wants to get more details on it, I did write a blog post about how you can use subtitles at different levels. And there's also the Chrome extension called Language Reactor, and that allows you to see two subtitles at the same time. So you could do like your native subtitle and the show's original subtitles at the same time.
That's very cool.
So there is that option if you want to watch on your computer instead of your TV. But yeah, I think it depends. Like if you need English subtitles to really enjoy the show and know what's going on in the plot, then use them. It's great if you can watch it one time with the English subtitles and then watch it again with the target subtitles. If you're more advanced, you can either watch with the target subtitles on, or if you really want to practice your listening and not use the subtitles as a crutch, then no subtitles is better. And if you're like, wait, I didn't understand, then you can go back and see how well your comprehension was.
That's a really good advice. And I think, we all kind of, no matter what language, our native language, a language, we're very proficient in, you still kind of get sucked into reading. Like I've noticed that myself, like I speak this language, I would understand this without subtitles, but when there's subtitles, I'm looking at them and reading them. Even when it's English, even when it's French, like these languages that I can speak without, thinking. So yeah, it's just kind of funny that is a good idea to try it without, because I think it is a crutch. It's a good metaphor. We get afraid to go without it. It's the training wheels that we're afraid to take off, but it'll just happen. It'll be a more fluid experience when like you can't just eventually, right? If that's
like
in your plan.
For example, if I watch TV shows with my boyfriend who does not speak all the same languages as me, I put the English subtitles on. And I noticed that when I'm watching, I'm reading the subtitles. I'm very
Yes.
much a visual person. And I'm like, I don't even know what they said in this other language because like I know it wasn't the same thing as the English
Right.
translation, but I'm like, I didn't even hear it because I was just focused visually.
Yeah. And I've noticed that with myself too. I'm like, okay, I
Hmm.
should just turn these off because I'm getting distracted. And yeah, it's an interesting conundrum. But yeah, I think it depends is definitely a good answer. And it's also, when I'm teaching now, I'm telling my students like try it, in Spanish, try it in English, try it without, like, it's not a you
Hmm.
have to choose once and for the next 12 weeks. Our classes are, 3 months. Do only that method. Like you can change
Yeah.
it up, right? Like you said, go back, the 10-second little go back button if you didn't catch something is great. And even on Netflix, like if you pause and you can like change the subtitle as it's going and it'll, Spanish, French, like whatever language you want, it'll like change automatically. Like it's not like you have to replay it. So even if you're
Hmm.
paused, you can go through a bunch of languages and see how they would say it. So I think that's a nice little feature there. This is
Yeah,
all
so
very
true.
new to me though. Like I'm not, I should confess, I'm not a TV watcher. I have not watched a series in over 2 years, probably, like sat down and like watched a show consistently. And now I'm teaching
Hmm.
to, teaching one class that's in Spanish on Casa de Papel. And then I'm doing some curriculum development for 10%, which is the French
Hmm.
show, Call My Agent, and then Money Heist, the Spanish one. So I'm like thrown into this role of like all this TV watching, and I'm like, I'm forced to do it, but it's actually very enjoyable. So I'm getting back into
Hmm.
how nice it is to like follow a plot and like know the characters and what's going on.
Yeah, and we've done those two shows before, so we can
Oh
definitely chat
yeah.
about
Oh, I
that.
would
Hmm.
love to. And also I wanted to tell the listeners that we will add your blog posts and all of your websites and everything into the show notes so that it'll be a super easy find. They can just click on all those things if you mention anything else. All right. So I want to know the best and the worst parts about learning with TV. What's the good? What's the bad? What's the ugly?
I think, there's a lot of great things, and that is one, you get to hear native speakers, you get a lot of input, right? And it's like easy input that's enjoyable, you're not like dreading through it. Um, And then also you get to hear a lot of just colloquial slang and just terms like hey there, what you doing? Like
Yep.
things
Oh,
like
I've
that.
I've picked up so much with the Spain Spanish. I was like, oh my God,
Hmm.
this word, these are all super like specific to Spain,
Oh yeah.
colloquialisms,
Yeah.
just
Watch a
vocab.
Mexican series and you'll be like, whoa, like
I
head
don't even speak
exploded.
Spanish. No, I'm just kidding. But like I feel like people feel that way. Like when you watch, I had this experience also. We do little clips during class, even in our non-TV classes. And I was, teaching with French, and we watched this little, bande annonce, like a trailer for a movie. And my students were like, "Whoa, they're so fast," and also like we don't understand. And I was like, "Well, the movie's based on like high school, college kids, and they're speaking with very like
Hmm.
yeah, slang, colloquialisms." And I was like, that's normal that you don't understand. Like even me who lived in France 10 years ago, I don't know all these words because like
Yeah.
the slang has evolved since then. So yeah, I think it can be a little intimidating sometimes because they're like, I've studied for so long and now I don't understand anything. And it's not the academic language you used to study,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah, definitely not textbook. And I would say probably a thing that's not good would be if, for example, if you are only using videos like TV and movies to learn, but not actively using it. So if you're just kind of passively watching it and
Mm-hmm.
thinking that you're going to learn a whole lot, it might not happen. So you probably want to work on actively using it, whether that's like summarizing the episode to somebody, or even writing it down, or
Right.
even just kind of like imagining in your head how you would go through a conversation with somebody about what happened,
Mm-hmm.
or even just picking out certain vocab words and making sentences with them. So you have to kind of turn what you're learning into active so that your brain retains it, really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a really good point and something that can happen with any input like listening or TV is yeah,
Mm-hmm.
like same thing with podcasts, right? Like you can just listen and it can be an enjoyable experience, but if you want to like remember, what you're, if there's new vocab, yeah, you do have to maybe take that extra step and write things down. And I've been doing that because I'm like, if my students ask me what certain words mean, I'm like, if it's a new word for me, I'm jotting it down. So yeah, I think that's definitely at that intermediate level. Like, hopefully not every word is new, right? So you can just pick out the few, 10, 20, whatever it is, words that might be new to you, and then jot them down. And then, like you said, you can always take it a step further, right? Write a sentence with it, or tell someone about it, and write a summary. It doesn't have to be these long, tedious things. It could be, just talk to yourself for 2 minutes, like what happened, right? And I've always suggested as well, like recording yourself, even if you don't show it to anybody, but like just put your camera, most of us are now used to being on camera. Set up your camera, press record, and talk about what the episode was. And then you'll see progress over time for sure. Like if you start recording yourself, with the 1 month, 2 month, whatever the intervals are, like you do see progress. So
yeah, definitely.
Okay, so Lauren, we've been talking a lot about TV because that's a topic that I want to know about, personally for my professional career. But we didn't really get into what, you told us quickly which languages you learned, but when, why, how did these languages come into your life? You said you enjoy learning languages. I think many people listening, myself included, are part of that category where this is just something we're passionate about. But tell us, what was the first language? I'm assuming school, but yeah, tell us that whole journey and how you kept adding things in, because you've got a number of languages under your belt.
Yeah, so my first language was French. And I feel like I got interested in it because my grandmother was French Canadian.
Nice.
And she passed away when I was young. So I feel like maybe that helped me feel a little bit more connected to her. And so I asked my mom to buy me a Berlitz CD-ROM so I can learn French as a
Oh,
kid.
we're
So
dating
that
ourselves,
was my
Lauren.
first, yeah, my first self-language learning experience. Um, and then, I studied that in high school and in college as well. So did a lot of years with French and studied abroad and things like that. I also started studying sign language in college as well, and did more ASL with my career after I graduated everything. And
Can you just briefly explain? So ASL, if people don't know, is American Sign Language, because countries have their own, right? British is different, but how does that play into your role as a speech language pathologist? So we don't talk a lot about speech language pathologists, but they're a huge part of the language, community. They help. And for, multilingual parents, they might be working with one or interested in working with one. So maybe just a little brief discussion of that would be great.
Yeah. Yeah. So speech pathologists are kind of everywhere. They work with geriatric patients, or they're in schools or hospitals. So I work with kids. Right now I'm in a private outpatient clinic. And but I used to work at the School for the Deaf and the Blind. So that's where sign language was really important. But a lot of speech therapists learn sign language to help young kids when they're first learning to communicate, because believe it or not, kids can learn how to sign before they learn how to speak. So for example, you can have a 10-month-old that's telling you, I want milk, I want,
Yeah,
this or
no,
that.
I did that with
And
my kids, and one of my first things I published on my, Instagram page that was new back then was my daughter signing please, but she was saying proszę, which is the Polish word for please. And like, yeah, we did the baby sign, right? But that is a whole different, baby sign is so different from ASL. So don't want to confuse the two at all. But yeah, I think parents nowadays maybe are more aware of that. And a lot of parents are getting into that baby sign of, milk, water, mom, dad, or dad, mom, all those things. Then I think, I think it's a little bit more well known, but I think it is really important to say that, because kids get frustrated when they're not understood. And a kid who's going to, maybe has some speech delay or speech issue is going to be super frustrated. And we know like terrible twos, but like if a kid is, getting around that age, which actually starts in like 1.5, I noticed it starts way earlier. Parents are like, what? Why is my kid like saying no and like super crabby? it's so helpful. They just want to get their message across, and they're like, "Why are you not
Mhm.
understanding me?" So yeah, I think
Yeah, communication
getting
can be such a big reason for, yeah, for frustration and for
outbursts,
negative
pressure.
behaviors. Yeah.
Totally.
But yeah, so that's how the sign language came into play
Mhm.
with my career. Um, so I learned in college and then continued learning when I started working at the School for the Deaf and the Blind.
Mhm.
And so then after that, or really kind of in the middle of that, I I started learning Spanish. I just bought a book or like a kit that had a
Mhm.
book and a CD-ROM in it
Yep.
from Borders before they closed, and
I
it was
remember
like
that store well.
50% off. So I was like, okay, yeah, I can afford that as a college student.
Mhm.
And so I started with that, and then that was really my first lesson. If you don't use it, then you lose it.
Right.
So I lost a lot of the Spanish that I kind of learned on my own because I just wasn't
Mhm.
speaking with anybody.
Right.
And then
Did you
fast
take
forward a
any
couple of
formal
years.
lessons? Sorry to interrupt. Did you take any formal lessons? It
Mm-mm.
was just all on your own.
Yeah, yeah, not in Spanish. Just did that. I had a few coworkers that I worked with that were Colombian, so I spoke with
That's
them.
cool.
Like I had one friend who we would just go to the bar, get a glass of wine, and just speak in Spanish. So she would help me out a lot. So
It's a good way to learn.
yeah, yeah.
No pressure.
Um, Yeah, no, just do like a bunch of random apps and things, trying to just build my vocabulary and do a lot of like audiobooks
Mhm.
and things like that. So yeah, so then a few years later I decided to try Mandarin
Wow.
Chinese. I actually tried it a little bit in college and I'm like, no, this is hard. I can't do it right now.
Yeah, it's
And
you need to be dedicated. It's like
yeah, but I got back to it a few years later and it surprisingly I remembered some.
that's amazing.
So that was cool.
Did
Hmm.
you start just with audio? I mean, I'm just curious because I know for myself, I've never done Mandarin, but like Japanese, for example, it has like the three alphabets, and I found it so
Hmm.
much easier when I was just focused on the listening. Like I had the Pimsleur CD, and I would just listen and do the pronunciation. I did this before we had a trip with my high school that I was chaperoning, and they were like, "Come with us," and I was like, "Okay," pre-kids. So I was trying to do a little bit so I could just ask, "Can you speak English?" Things like that. Say hello.
Yeah.
But then when so I studied a little bit, I was able to go over there and say a few things, and everyone was like, "Wow, she says like 5 words," but because nobody else made effort, they just went over. But then like couple years later, because I had kids at this point, I was like, let me study Japanese again. It's such a beautiful language, and I was like going by the alphabet first, and then it was like I don't know, it was like discouraging. Like, what do you suggest with languages like that? Do you think it's easier to just focus on listening for a while and then tackle the writing system, because Chinese is such a complicated writing system, Japanese as well, but less so? What do you suggest? Because I do not have a good level in Japanese at all. I can barely say like three things. So as someone who speaks one of those languages better, I'm just curious what your opinion is.
Yeah, and I would say I'm kind of at this point in Mandarin where I've learned about as much as I feel like I can uh auditorily, or at least the
Mm-hmm.
verbal part of it. And now I really want to get into the reading and writing.
Mm-hmm.
So like definitely I did more of just the pronunciation and the listening and kind of just like imitating
Mm-hmm.
phrases first. I'm a visual person, so I definitely had the Pinyin
Opinion,
there to help me.
right?
Um, and without that, I don't know that I could retain it because auditorily, like I'll hear a sound and then I'll just say it differently the next time.
Yeah, and especially with
I need
tone,
to
like
see it.
you need that that written out
Hmm.
reminder that the tone goes like this.
Yeah, exactly. So that's
But
how I did it. So I don't really know if I can suggest anything
mhm,
because it's just so
I'm just
interesting. But
curious. Yeah,
yeah, and then but there's so many characters. I mean, just
yeah,
thousands upon thousands.
and they're
So
complicated. They're not.
yeah.
There's not a finite number like an alphabet where you learn it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. And I
I
will
found
say
myself
though,
discouraged. Like I found myself, I was like, oh my God, like I can't remember these different hiragana, and like, I was like getting discouraged,
mhm,
whereas I should have been focusing my time not on learning to write, but like learning words that I could actually speak and use. I
Like
feel like,
communicating.
yeah, I got frustrated and then I like gave up and I was like, let me do Italian.
Yeah.
So,
But yeah, I will say that just seeing the characters while I was learning, more basic communication and like the most important words for having a conversation, I did start to recognize them. So I could read at maybe like a HSK 1, maybe 2 level
mhm.
just from seeing the characters over and over and over again. So
Okay.
I will say that even if you're not studying them specifically, you may still pick them up just because you just keep seeing them over and
Exposure.
over.
Hmm.
Exactly.
Yeah, but I think I would suggest, like don't put that pressure on yourselves because I mean, languages are we're speaking and listening more than we're reading and writing, right? And if you're going to go to a
Mm.
place, it's not likely they're going to ask you to write a letter. It's more likely they're going to talk to you. So,
Mhm.
to
And we
myself,
got phones now and like email and
yeah,
autocorrect
even the
and
way to
so.
text, right? Like
Mhm.
there's ways of in Chinese, right? That in Japanese as well. I think you can
Yeah,
like
you like put
type
in
it
the
out,
pinyin and then
the romanji.
it'll give
Yeah.
you a list of characters to choose from. So you just kind of have to recognize it rather than know all of the strokes. So.
Which is crazy. I don't know. It's almost like there's all these little battles like, well, is that better or are kids becoming lazy? Right? Like the autocorrect versus not autocorrect battle of like, is this helping our kids or not?
Mhm.
The knowing cursive versus not knowing cursive. I mean, we could get into all sorts of battles of like, is it better now or was it better way back when? Um,
Mhm.
that's for another day. But yeah, I just think it's interesting. All right, so Mandarin, which is I'm just so impressed with that.
Mhm. Yeah, and then I definitely tried to learn a couple of languages that I did not succeed at. So
Oh, good.
I
Tell us.
learned a lot,
That'll
but so
help.
it's
Yeah.
always a good journey, I think. Even if you're not successfully using that language, you still learn a lot about the process.
Which languages did
And
you dabble in?
yeah, and then I learned Italian kind of through an experiment that I did because I knew French and Spanish, so I was
Mm-hmm.
like, well, let me see if I do one lesson of Italian on Duolingo every day, and they just have these short lessons, right?
Yep.
And then I write one like small little journal entry or like answer a question.
Mm-hmm.
Will I learn Italian in a year? And it was like kind of successful. I feel like I got to a good point, but definitely at that point I was like, yeah, I need to hear more input and actually talk to somebody. So
So
I did
you
a
you
couple of
did that for
lessons.
1 year, just
Yeah, I did
Duolingo
that
and
for one
writing,
year. Every day I did one Italian lesson and then wrote something in
but you
Italian.
weren't tempted to, I don't know, listen to something, watch something, talk with someone.
Well, towards the end, maybe like October,
Mm-hmm.
November in the year, I was like, yeah, I gotta actually listen
It's time.
to
Yeah.
some conversation or something. So yeah, I did add that
Wow.
in.
Wow, wow, that's cool. We probably started Italian around the same time, and I was doing the Duolingo events. I have talked about this on the podcast
Mm.
before, but they've now canceled them, which is so sad.
Hmm.
So I would say go practice, but you can't with Duolingo anymore.
But you know what? Italki
Mhm.
just started doing group classes.
Oh, really?
Hmm.
Well, that's good timing. I wonder if that was planned.
I think it's
Yeah,
related.
it's got to be related. Well, that's really interesting. Is that a better rate? I mean, Italki's not that
I have
expensive
no
anyway,
idea.
but
Yeah, I don't know.
interesting. What were the languages that just curious, you tried, you dabbled in, but like never took off?
The one was Arabic.
Hmm.
And I was able to say some things in Arabic, but my problem was I couldn't choose a dialect that I wanted to focus on.
Yeah.
So, I didn't want to learn modern standard Arabic because a lot of people don't use that in everyday conversation.
Hmm.
So then I was like hopping in between the different ones. So I ended up just at a very, very basic level,
Hmm.
and confused. So
Yeah.
that didn't go so well.
And the dialects are very different. So if you choose
Hmm.
one over the other, it's some are more comprehensible than others. But yeah, I think it's definitely a hard one where it's not like you speak Spanish with a Castilian accent versus a Latin American accent. It's
Hmm.
a world of a difference.
Yeah, it's like a completely different language.
It
And
can
then the
be
other one was Swahili,
cool.
which is a really cool language. I love the way the grammar works. And I did that one kind of as an experiment as well, another Duolingo
Hmm.
experiment. where I wrote down every single new word that I
Mm-hmm.
encountered in Duolingo because I thought, hey, I'm a visual person. I would
Yep.
love if there was like a word bank in Duolingo.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started writing it down, but then the problem with that was one, consistency. I couldn't stay consistent when I
Mm-hmm.
had all this other stuff going on.
Well,
And then two, I didn't have anything that was really connecting me to the language. Like there wasn't somebody that I wanted to talk to, there wasn't a
mm-hmm.
show that I wanted to watch. You know, like I could have gone out and found those resources, but there wasn't anything out there like calling my name
Right.
that made me
I hear
really
you.
motivated to continue. So
Yeah. And that is a huge part. The motivation part, the
mhm.
yeah. Because you can it we all have that excitement when we start like, wow, they have Navajo on Duo. I did like a few lessons, but
Yeah.
like I'm not gonna continue because right, the same reasons. Like I don't have the motivation, I don't have the drive, I don't have the connection to that community, et cetera, et
Mhm.
cetera. So but I think I definitely understand the way you say like it was interesting to compare the grammar. Like I loved, the more languages the more you kind of see the patterns and the way things work. So I think a lot of people
It's so
listening might
cool.
understand like comparing, comparative grammar and things like that. Just language nerd stuff for sure. All right. Were those all your languages? We're missing any?
Yeah, I did like study Portuguese for like a month one time because we did a Portuguese TV club and I'm like, hey, I'm gonna participate. So I just like picked up a book
Cool.
and tried to learn and then I got all confused with my Italian. So I was like, nah, let's leave that for another time.
Oh, I hear you. When I started Italian, which was like 2 years ago, I actually did a few lessons of Italian and a few lessons of Portuguese on Duo, and that's how I chose. I was like, I'm either
Mm.
going with Portuguese or Italian. So I did a couple lessons of each, and then I was like, I'm going to go with Italian. Like I just was like, just based on my feelings, or I feel like the pronunciation of Portuguese is hard, and there's also that whole, Brazilian versus Portugal,
Mhm.
which dialect you're going to choose, and I felt more of a drive towards Italian. But yeah, Portuguese one day would be nice because I feel like I would go to these events for Duolingo that had was all the Romance languages together. So people would speak whatever Romance language. You could go into
Mm.
a breakout and practice just French or just Spanish. But then a lot of us stayed in the main room and people spoke whatever they wanted. And most of us knew at least two or three, and so I would like, I knew French, Spanish, Italian, and then I was like listening to the Portuguese. I was like, I understand you. And then I could respond in whatever language I wanted. So we had
Mhm.
a lot of Spanish and Portuguese. So like me and this other girl from Canada, we would speak French because there wasn't as many people speaking French, but like people understood it. But yeah.
Mhm.
And then there was like a guy from Romania, and like we were like, nobody understands. Like we were like, slow down. We don't understand. Unfortunately, it's actually not that different. Like when you see it written out, we're
Mhm.
like, oh, okay, we see the relationship. But like when he would speak it, we're like, what? But yeah, that was a really cool group.
Yeah, that sounds
I miss
fun.
that because it it was like amazing to me. I was like, I've never studied more than that one lesson on Duolingo, but like I can understand what he's talking about because the conversation was already in French Spanish. So like I already knew the context, right? It wasn't a whole class in Portuguese. So there was a little caveat there. But but it's fun time. All right. Any proud bilingual moment that you've had in your life? There's probably many.
Yeah, I mean, I've had a lot of great moments from knowing more than English.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's one of the things that I just love to tell people about because, I think some people can come off like, stigmatized, like, oh, I know all these languages, I'm so cool. But for me, it's more like, hey, let me be a resource for you, or let's connect you with this language.
Yeah.
And there's just been some good times where, somebody needed help and I was able to offer help.
Mm-hmm.
And, they were in a situation where somebody else was not understanding them. And I think sometimes when people don't speak the same language, they can have assumptions about each other
100%.
without knowing what their real intentions are or what their real message is behind what they're saying. So
Mm-hmm.
I think it's just nice to be able to come in and um, show some truth or unveil the curtain.
You're the connector, the
Yeah,
liaison who's going to help. because there's a, like we always say, bridging that gap. Like you have these two speakers, they don't see things eye to eye, you know, maybe culturally, and you're able to like explain to the one like, well, they're doing this because this, and then explain to the other like, oh, they thought you were XYZ, right? Like you have these two lenses and you're able to see things, because I think culture is also a huge part of that, right? It's not just pure language, it's also in that culture this is viewed as some, you know, something, right? Like we can all those faux pas that we could accidentally do, right? Like you do a hand gesture in Italy and everyone's like, oh my God, don't do that hand gesture. And you're like, oh, I didn't realize that had meaning, right? They have that whole sub language of hand gestures. Yeah, I just think there's so much embedded when you're learning another, you know, language and culture, and just that's great though. I love the helping and the connecting people.
Yeah, I mean, if you
Hard to
can
pick
just
one
learn
moment.
a couple languages, or no, a couple words
Mm-hmm.
in a new language, you can really just connect with another person so much better.
I think, yeah, I totally agree. And it also puts someone at ease, right? Like even my like few sentences in Japanese, I've started teaching English as a second language, or English as a foreign language, as I prefer to call it. And I was able to like greet my student and say like, you know, the traditional like, please treat me nicely, like, you know, nice to meet you kind of thing. And that's all I know, you know, like I don't know anything more. But she was like, oh, you know, she was like, oh my gosh, your accent, and like blah blah blah. And you know, like even though that was the extent of it, and I'm now here to teach her English, but like it just, you know, it like gives you these little warm feelings when someone like recognizes like, I know this thing about your culture, and like you know, I have a tiny bit of interest, or you know, it just shows nice feelings. I guess it has
Yeah, and
that.
especially with English, you know, if English is your native language and you're talking to somebody else who doesn't speak English that well, you know, you're kind of showing them like it's okay. Like English is not the top dog. Like I don't
Yes.
expect you to know it. Like I could speak your language instead.
Although on that note, you know, it's kind of funny because we can get away with saying that one phrase, you know, like, hajime mashite, and everyone's, oh wow,
Oh
you
yeah,
know.
yeah.
Whereas if somebody, you know, a foreigner says like an amazing thing in English, we're all just like, yeah, of course, because everybody speaks. You know, we're not impressed at all. Whereas like we can get away with murder. Like we could say like one sentence, totally butcher it, and everyone's like, yay, you said a sentence in Arabic, and like you totally butchered it. Or like, you know, whereas they could have perfect accent, say like 10 minutes of speech, and people are like, well, of course you speak. Like, or like
Yeah, it's so
we point out
true.
the one word that they said wrong, you know. So I feel like there is a little double-edged sword there where you know, we aren't impressed when people speak English, and like we should be. Like it is not easy to speak English. Our writing system's atrocious. Like there's so many, you know, factors, because if it's so hard to learn Japanese or Russian, it's just as hard for them to learn English, right? It goes both ways. So I feel like we don't give people enough credit. But when you are a language learner, you do. I feel like we get it, right? But if you're just a monolingual, you don't give them credit. You're like, well, of course you got to speak English if you're here, or like, of course everybody speaks English now. But like if you've gone through it, it's so humbling, right? Like you're stumbling through a hello and you're like, oh my God, I'm never going to speak this language. I can't even say how are you. It humbles you, right? So there's that whole experience, which is so important. I feel like everyone should have it, because it brings you back down to earth, right? You don't think you're this amazing person anymore when you can't even introduce yourself.
Yes. Yeah, you get used to like feeling like an idiot all the time.
Exactly. But like that's a good thing, right? We should be humbled in that way, because the roles can be reversed very easily, right?
Yeah.
And we shouldn't expect everybody to speak English. I think that's you know, it's an unfortunate thing that English is a lingua franca. Unfortunate. I mean, it depends who you're saying it for. But I do think it gives us this inflated sense of self that like everybody should speak our language. So
yeah.
All right, I do have one more question I forgot to ask, which is, how do you find people to host? Like you said that, you know, you were having somebody host Portuguese, so you're not hosting. Like, how do you find these people who are going to host your language club?
Yeah, and I will say I started out being the host for all the clubs. And sometimes it didn't go so well, especially like Italian. I was fumbling my way through it and I'd be like, okay, there's the question. What do you think? But yeah, we found some great hosts, and most of them were found because they were participating in the club. A lot of them also went to the Women in Language conference online. So that's kind of a group that we have found a lot of people through.
Yeah.
And recently our French host is actually the brother of an old friend that I knew when I studied abroad.
Wow.
So yeah, kind of an old connection coming
Yep.
to light. So
Fun.
yeah, so different ways, but definitely Women in Language has made a big impact for the Language TV Club. And then just people participate for another language that they're learning, and then I'm like, hey, do you want to host your language? And so they're like, yeah, sure.
And are you open to people, contacting you and saying, I would love to host Swedish, or,
Oh yeah,
whatever. Okay,
definitely. Yeah.
cool.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll leave
Yeah.
all that into the show notes so people can easily find it and contact you if they do either want to participate or they want to host or both, right? I mean, it's good to kind of participate first and see what it's all about. Then you know what your role is as host. So, okay. My last question that I ask everyone is, could you teach us a word or a phrase in one of your languages? So I know you have many. So it might be hard to pick.
Yeah. There was definitely like a lot of fun ones that I learned from watching Chinese TV shows.
Oh, yes.
But recently, since I've been doing Vietnamese, I actually just really love the way they get somebody's attention, and they change the pronoun based on who you're talking to.
Okay.
So like if you're talking to a woman who is younger than you, you'll say am, and if you're talking to a woman who's older than you say chi. And then if it's like somebody that's like your aunt's age, and then if somebody that's your grandmother's age, like so
The
there's different
honorifics.
pronouns
Yeah.
for different ages. So you actually have to ask people like, how old are you? So you know which pronoun to use. But the way they can get your attention is just go like am oi. So you say like the pronoun and then oi
Boy.
after it.
Oh, that's fun.
And it's just really
Like
fun.
joy.
Am oi. And then like before you ask a question or something.
Mm.
So yeah,
That is
I like
so,
that.
yeah, culturally specific, right? Like that. How do you translate that into English? Like, and even just the way languages, yeah, they'll say things like sister, brother, aunt, where we only use that for family. Like, why are you calling that your aunt? She's not related to you. And also the honorifics, right? And I know Korean and Chinese, I'm assuming probably Mandarin and Cantonese have that honorific system. I don't know. That's so interesting. Well, thank you. That is really, and that's almost like evocative for anyone who in Polish they have evocative when you talk to someone. You have to change the case. Maybe Latin, I've never studied it, but you can't just say like mama, you have to say mamo, change the ending. And it's kind of
When you're
losing
talking directly to
to
somebody?
them, like you're calling them, like you're saying
Okay.
mamo. And it's losing out. Like you could do it with everybody's first name, but it's getting dropped. People are just saying regular names. But they still do it with certain words like mama and so you'll see it in books. So we were reading a book. I do a class every week and we read children's books. So we saw a bunch of examples there because it was Good Night Moon.
Good night,
And
moon.
the little the word of like the little bunny is saying good night to all the things. So he's like good night moon, good night, toy, good night story. And so it was all the vocative. So it was really interesting to see. But anyway, I digress. We could talk about language all day, the two of us. But thank you so much. Let us know before we end, where can we find you? How can we get in contact with you? Because you've mentioned so many things that people might be interested in joining or contacting you about.
Yeah. So I am on Instagram pretty often. I have 3 different accounts, which is like my personal language learning, where I just kind of make funny reels sometimes. I don't post super often on that, and that's living on language. And then we have Polyglot Station, that is just the main business Instagram, and then Language TV Club. It's very just uh direct the names, I guess.
Yep.
Not very creative, but yeah, so those on Instagram, and then also have languagetvclub.com and polyglotstation.com.
Great.
Very easy to remember, I guess.
Good. I'll put it in the show notes nonetheless so people can
Yeah, so
easily
you can
find it.
contact me on any of those platforms, and then the blog is on the TV Club website. So
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. It was such a pleasure to talk with you about this topic. And it is such a great way to learn. I think you've tapped into a really important resource, which is, the live language shows on Netflix. And then you're also addressing that huge intermediate gap where we don't know what to do, but we need to talk and we need to practice. So I just commend you for that, because I think it's a really great endeavor you're doing. And I hope to maybe join some of those someday. We'll see.
Yeah, we'd love to have you.
After this course session, because I've got too much TV watching already. Like going from 0 to like 2 hours a week is a lot for me. I can't like find the time. I was up till midnight. I was like, okay, I got to go to bed now. I can't watch anymore.
That's
I shouldn't complain. All right. Well, thank you so much. We'll see you
Thank
soon.
you.
Take care.